Welcome to the West Virginia Legislature on the West Virginia Channel. The Senate has just gavelled in for its morning floor session.
Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, May 17th, 2016. The Senate met at 10
Senator from
a.m.
Monongalia requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed
The
with.
Senate has two bills on second reading today, the tobacco tax and the bill to sweep funds from several state agency accounts.
Communications from the House.
There are none.
Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
There are none.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 1006 by Senators Cole, Mr. President, and Kessler by request of the Executive authorizing Governor to furlough state employees and pay certain obligations in event of fiscal emergency.
Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary and then the Committee on Finance. Resolutions.
There are none.
Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
There are none.
Bills on second reading.
Senate Bill 1002, expiring funds from various accounts to unappropriated balance in state fund general revenue. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading. The senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 days be suspended and that the bill be read a third time and placed upon its passage.
Senator from Jackson moves that the constitutional rule requiring bills to be read on 3 different days be suspended and the bill be read a third time and be placed upon its passage. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 32 yeas, 2 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than 4/5 of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rules suspended. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Senate Bill 1002, expiring funds from various accounts to unappropriated balance in state fund general revenue. Third reading of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We considered this bill in finance, and we had an excellent presentation from our analyst. Basically, we're filling a $63,700,000 hole in the 16 budgets through various items that are being expired for that purpose. Just briefly, let's see where that list is, Michael. Which one is that? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. President. What we've done is $12,150,000 from the joint expenses and tax, the traffic account we call it. $8.5 million from the Attorney General Consumer Protection Fund, or from the Attorney General, and then the Consumer Protection Fund in the amount of $2.5 million from the Health Department, West Virginia Healthcare Authority, Healthcare Cost Review in the amount of $29 million from the Department of Revenue, the Office of the Secretary Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund in the amount of $5 million from the Department of Revenue, and Insurance Commissioner's Fund in the amount of $4.6 million. So it's several different agencies that were explained to us in committee, and they total up the amount of money it's necessary to fill the 2016 budget gap. Be careful. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Is there discussion? Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Senator from Putnam yield?
Senator
So
yields.
in a nutshell, this shores up, finalizes, balances the 2016 budget that ends here on June 30th, correct?
That's correct.
And we are accomplishing that in large part by taking $29 million from the Rainy Day A Fund.
That's correct. $29 million is part of the Rainy Day Fund.
And the sweeps, I guess there's going to be $32.7 million in sweeps are the 2 biggest components of that.
That's exactly correct.
And that, add that with $2 million in general revenue will help shore up the 2016 budget at least. And then we
That's
divert
correct.
our attention to 2017.
And I'm sorry, I thought you were done. Okay.
All right. But in your view, this doesn't wipe out all the available sweep accounts that are available. Is that correct?
Not quite all of them.
All right. There's still going to be some that you're going to be looking to for 2017 budget?
Well, you know,
sweeps.
Conversation has been to try to reach whatever the tobacco tax bill ends up, 70 million plus, and to try to reach cuts that would be close to that, or some one-time money, and then the rest of it would be from the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund. I think is the plan.
All right, so I guess what I'm looking at is we passed out at Finance yesterday a bill for the cigarette tax. It'll be on the floor here shortly for about 70 to 75. I can't remember the exact number out of the 270 budget for 227.
That's correct.
So we're still looking at a 70 or 200 approximately, give or take a few million here or there,
Correct.
to balance the 2017 budget.
Correct.
I guess my question is, how much is available in other accounts that could be swept towards that 200 million, if any, or are we looking all at rainy day fund or cuts for that 200?
Well, we have looked at the prospect of reaching out into other special revenue accounts. You know, there's a difference between a cash balance of a special revenue account and a reappropriated balance of a general obligation account or general revenue account. But the Republican caucus and different ones have charged me as a finance chairman by looking for and have been meeting with people, including, you know, and we'll continue to meet with you all as we look at some of these, to try to find areas of cutting to get to $70 million.
So the goal is, as I understand it, is to pass a tobacco tax for 70 million, do 70 million in cuts of some kind, and borrow the 130 out of the rainy day fund, or not borrow, but take.
Well,
130 out
I
of the
think
rainy
it's
day fund.
possible that there have been things that have not been done. There are things we think that can be done that, like the rainy day fund is brought into the budget, and then you move it around, you do little things, but we know there are special. Oh, that's true. Yeah, there are two things. We could look at some cash accounts. We've also written some letters to the governor. There were certain things that were not on the call that have been here before, and whether or not they would even pass the process, but a part of that could be some of those things. I mean, the governor had a bill before us that died a pretty swift death here on the floor, but that dealt with the school aid formula, that dealt with counties. It had to do with, you know, you're from the county that's paying all of your people all that money up there because you've got all that nat gas.
Good leadership will do that.
That's right. And so, and it also the will of God to have all that gas in your area. So but that forced other counties to have to raise salary because you've got to be within 10% of the highest paid person in the state. So part of what's behind that law was to try to make up that disparity between counties that couldn't quite get there to try to reach the standard that you all set in your county. And that bill actually generated $15 million for, that was, of the $1.9 billion, that was 15 million, somebody said billion, 15 million. That's a bill that, you know, could be brought up. Whether it passed or not, I don't know. It's a tough one to get through.
But at this point, that is not on the call, and that's not before us. So we're looking at.
But there have been some conversations, more so with House leadership than with us, but we're involved with the conversation and by letter request, I think, some of our folks, to get some of those bills up here, which could get you an extra $30 to $40 million if they all came up and we all agreed to them.
But as we stand here today getting ready to vote, we're looking at taking 29 out of the rainy day fund.
Mm-hmm.
The plan is to potentially take up to 130 out of for the 2017 budget and look for 70 in cuts.
That's probably true. And how much should we take out? Maybe the number's not accurate. He's going to look it up. But for this 2016 budget, let's keep this in perspective. When we did our budget last year, we voted on it on the floor with a revenue estimate from the governor. Now we're finding out that $464 million of that revenue estimate did not exist. So throughout this year, this state budget has had the state agencies and so forth absorbed a $95 million, 4% across the board cut, in the sense of not on a document, but being told not to spend that money. That's now reflected in the budget we have before us, so it's already $95 million cut. Fill it with rainy day and all those actions that we took special revenue money to fill that. But this is the final piece of a $464 million problem for 16. And so I guess that's just the sum of what we've just completed here.
Yeah. And obviously, we're 6 weeks away to the end of the fiscal year, so we need to do something and do it rapidly. I understand that. And certainly, I'm just trying to look at the big picture as we or get ready to vote on things that are going to affect the 2017 budget. What is the package plan? Because we've got a cigarette tax as it's presented from finance with $70-some million. We're still 200 short. We have not identified any specific cuts to programs that we're going to be voting on, and or how much we're going to be looking at taken from the rainy day fund, because 29's taken now. If we take another 130, I think you'd agree with me that the liquid portion of rainy day A is probably about 380 or so. It was represented yesterday in finance. If you take 29 out of it, you're down to about 350. You take a 130 out of it.
I was surprised to hear that we would remain above 15% of the general revenue.
With A and B.
Yes, when you combine them together, which is kind of what Mike said yesterday was important thing to do. Right. I think 164 million would have been available, and if you go below that, if you take more than that, then you go below the 15% number. As one of those things that was important as we're watched by the rating agencies and others. So
I'm just trying to get an explanation. I understand what we're doing with 2016, but looking forward where we might be looking with future votes here as early as moments from now, how it all plays together.
Yeah, I think it's right. 70, attempt to get to 70. I'll admit it's pretty hard to get there, but and 130.
So part of that option's on the 70 or on the 130 is looking at some other requested legislation. Would
anything
that be
you could get
the
to come
70
in,
in cuts?
anything you could get to come in there that would kind of fill up, I think we would try to add it to or subtract it from the rainy day fund contribution, or maybe a combination of both.
Well, it's been helpful. It just gives, I think, our caucus, who've not been as involved in any of the discussions either with your caucus or the governor's office.
Yeah, we intend
on
to
where
have
we are as the big picture.
We intend in the next day, like we had our brief meeting in my office, to do that again and maybe a couple more times with you guys as well to go over. I know the budget process is, I think I was kind of misunderstood, but I said earlier in the year, somebody said, I said everybody wants to be a finance chairman. No, I didn't say it that way. I said everybody probably needs to be one right now, meaning that everybody needs to kind of take a little bit of effort to look more deeply into the things that drive this problem and the accounts that we have to deal with. So,
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from Putnam continue to yield?
Senator yields.
yes, sir.
Thank you. Under the DHHR, Department of Health and Human Resources, see we're taking $2.5 million out of that. Can you tell me, is that surplus, or is there going to be programs cut in the DHHR based on that money?
These were not done by, this comes as the governor's action, and I assume that he vetted these cuts, and I'm not exactly sure from whence they came entirely. I know that we're looking at having her come to a committee tomorrow to talk about, but we're looking to see if we get you a clear answer.
Just, again, one of the biggest concerns I have is that, that we are responsible for the public safety of the residents of West Virginia and the public health of the residents in West Virginia, and I just, in a budget that's already been kind of cut, I just worry about taking money out of public health.
Michael says that we don't think any programs were cut here. There have been some, cash balances here and there in these agencies, and maybe that's where they came from. We just have to get that answer to you later, because this particular supplemental came up from the governor, and we just ran it as it came to us.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senator from Putnam would yield. Finance Chair would yield, please.
Senator yields.
Yes.
Senator, and you may have said this, I may have missed it in saying it, the $29 million from the rainy day fund, we can close gaps being very quick and very fast here because we want to get out of town and do other things, I suppose. But the future is what concerns me. This $29 million from the rainy day fund is, you're a big bond guy, big ratings guy. Has this started to deplete our ratings? Is this hurting our ratings as we do this?
You know, there was a letter distributed to the Finance Committee from the Revenue Secretary Monday, I think it was, which was a long letter from the rating agencies, and I would probably recommend you read that if you haven't read it. They did express that they wanted to see a structurally sound budget produced by the legislature. They didn't, I mean, I think you could get into a dispute over whether or not that has to be done now or next legislative session.
Well,
but
what do we mean by structurally sound? Tell me what you mean.
That's a good question. Let me answer that. It's real simple. Whatever you base budget plan to spend, that you show consistent revenues to support that.
Okay.
And that you're not constantly going to the well of cash balances and one-time money. On the rainy day fund, though, they commended us for having one of the strongest in the country. We have our rainy day fund vested. Part B is invested West Virginia Investment Manager Board. There's been some gains in it. If you look historically at it, it only was populated with $200 million from tobacco settlement years ago. It's now worth $400 million. And then the rainy day A comes from surplus of the budget by statute. You know, we put half of our surplus in it. It's not as vested as aggressively, not to say rainy day B is invested aggressively, but what they've said about us is that we've done well in how we've managed the money and the amount of money we have. And what was said in committee is that there is a place of which if you go below, it's a danger number. It's 15%. The rainy day fund needs to be above 15% greater than your general revenue budget. So we're at 18%. So we were told in committee yesterday, 164 million gets you to 15%. We're 18. So we're healthy in that sense. Now, I believe if they would see us, if they would not see a great solution next year to significant cuts or significant revenues to get those things in line in the next year or so, in my opinion, that would be probably not helpful. I mean, I think we dropped 1 point from AA to AA minus, I think it was. There are 3 ratings. So right now we're on the edge. It'd be better off if we were funding this with revenue from their perspective. There's no question about that.
What happens if we drop one rating point or whatever that's called? What happens? Financially, what happens?
2 things happen. I've just been reading Alexander Hamilton's biography, by the way. Same problem 220 years ago.
Nice
If
to know
the
we have
creditworthiness of the United States of America or the state of West Virginia should drop, if you are a municipality or the state of West Virginia and you want to sell bonds, and I would liken this to if you go to get a mortgage and that heart-stopping moment when that mortgage broker puts in your Social Security number and pulls up your credit rating, at that point, he tells you...
I'm glad you pointed your finger at me
whether
on
it's
that one,
not pointing, I'm pointing, it pulls up your credit rating, whether it's 500 or 800 matters in terms of the interest rate you're going to have to pay. A little bit of downgrade of our bond rating, a little bit, the marketplace then has to decide as they dig into the finances of West Virginia, are they going to be worth, are we going to get our money back, basically? And when you're in the AA area and so forth, most people will buy those bonds, but sometimes you may have to pay a little more interest to get a buyer to buy your bonds. That's the main thing on new issues. Now, if you own West Virginia bonds, their value could slightly drop, but then you wait till maturity and you get your money back, so you don't lose if you're going to hold to maturity.
But this is pretty subjective. I mean, even with the $29 million...
This does not affect our bond rating.
It will not at all?
No. I don't, that's my opinion.
Again, it's subjective, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, 290 million or depleting it, yes, and with no significant cuts or significant new revenues to get these things lined up will affect our creditworthiness. I think if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at West Virginia and I'm understanding it's a political year, I'm not necessarily going to punish West Virginia knowing the political realities we're in right now. But if a year from now, if we haven't done something significantly responsible to get this budget lined up with revenue or expenditures, I think you will begin to see we
And
would
to put
decline.
this in simple terms for myself, technically then what we're doing with this rainy day scrape, this little one, and these one-time monies basically, is that we're potentially increasing our debt possibilities. By taking one-time money, changing our bond ratings, we're potentially increasing our debt rather than solving our debt problem. We could.
Debt meaning?
Interest, higher interest.
Potential. Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't, well, read the letter and you'll get some perspective on this. This would be one small component of it, I think.
Okay, that's my fear. Thank
All
you.
right.
Senator from Cabell.
Will the chair continue to yield?
I can't wait till we get to the tobacco tax bill. All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. All right.
Thank you. All right. So the other day I heard one of the members of the House leadership team going through these numbers that I'm very concerned about with the budget shortfall fund. What that person said, I think, is that if we approve the 29 million, I'm speaking now of 2016, that would take us up to $96 million out of the rainy day fund for this current fiscal year.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And I think also for 2015 and maybe a year or two prior, there was around $100 million
That's correct.
extracted from the budget shortfall fund. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then this year, the word on the street at least is, and I think you may have alluded to this earlier, we're looking at taking $130 million out of the budget shortfall fund. Is that a guess? Is that a fair estimate?
That's fair.
So that looks like $326 million out of that fund. Now, what my point, if I have one, would be this. The gentleman that I heard on the radio called that, he said we were going to dip. We were going to dip into that fund. It's more like Flounder and Bluto at the Delta House. That isn't a dipping into the fund. We're just having a drunken orgy over there. I mean, does anybody else share my problem with all this, the state's budget shortfall fund being squandered?
Well, let me
Go
put
ahead.
in
That was
perspective.
rhetorical.
Well, I just put in perspective that the state of West Virginia, a couple things have happened. Nobody wants to do this, but let's just put a couple things in perspective. One is that due to the leadership years ago, when they'd established these funds and stuck fiscally responsible, had a fiscal responsible budgeting over the years, you actually had that cash there far above the amount that I said earlier that the watching world wants to sees as healthy, 15%. So you were way, way, way up. We actually have in our law, that once you get to a certain percentage of fundedness or whatever, that you don't put any more money into it. So we've got kind of, we were getting real healthy. You combine that, though, with the fact nobody wants to do this, with the extractive industry collapse, the revenue collapses. I mean, I don't blame anybody for it. I think I spent 2 days at a meeting with financial officers and financial people around the United States talking about revenue estimates. And revenue estimates are done by, there are 2 large firms that do them. We have, our person out here has done them for years. And we could get critical and political and so forth, but I don't think anybody they saw a problem in the out years. I don't think they saw this particular crisis of the loss of all this revenue from natural gas and coal that hit this year. And then you're in a political year and you're in a year that people are, you know, and you've got the economy's rough and taxpayers, I mean, it's tough to go to them. I mean, it's all kind of, everybody's in trouble, so that this is the real rainy day. It's pouring. I mean, if you think of a perfect storm fiscally, this is what this is. And I don't think anybody would fault us, though we don't want to do it, or you or anybody, to reach into this fund. And we're still this year not going to go below the number that the world says you need to be there to be healthy. So whether you use the word dip or whatever you...
Dip, yes, it's a dip.
Or drag or whatever.
Just a little dip.
Yes, but it's caused by factors that we all can't ignore. I mean, Michael and I, we were watching the revenue numbers in the fall, and when we saw the collapse of nat gas particularly, which surprised everybody. Nobody believed nat gas prices were going to do what they did. I mean, it's been real damaging to several producers in this state. They shut her down a lot. It's tough to shut her down on Marcellus well, but a lot of bad stuff has happened that was not expected. So that, you know, do you just jump and after taxpayers or whatever? I mean, I just think, you know, we're trying to walk our way through this responsibly and incrementally and thank goodness we have this money that we can use. But you're right, if we go too far, then it begins to affect us.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Senior Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Senator from Putnam continue to yield?
Senator yields.
Yes.
Senator from, what is the total of this bill going to, as far as generate, to go to this fiscal year? How much money total? You may have said it, but I didn't catch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's $63.7 million of all the total things. Yeah.
All right, for this fiscal,
right,
till June 30th. And there's a shortfall of $111 million is what I heard Secretary Kiss say. Now, so that leaves us still $37 million at least. Where is that money going to come from?
No, well, I think you're referring to the 45. There's $45 million by executive order reducing spending in DHHR is how I did it.
Okay, so.
And I think that has something to do with Medicaid and how they're paying their bills and so forth. One more thing. Michael reminds me, remember when we had those discussions about those supplementals that we had meetings about the $22 million, they were also used to help fill the gap.
During the regular session or
extended
session?
Remember the last day when we have some dispute about the constitutionality of them and all that?
Right.
That you did. Okay. That the $22 million was part of it.
Okay, but that was during the extended session.
But they used that money. They reached forward and used that money for that.
All right. So I guess this is where, Secretary Kiss, when he said it was $111 million, he was not counting the extended session, $22 million. I just assumed he was talking about we still have, and I thought that was his statement over the joint session, is that we still had a $111 million deficit shortfall for this current year. So I'm not clear if I guess my question to you, would this particular supplemental appropriation bill take care of the
$111 million? Yes. Actually, I've got on my sheet here, I can just read it to you. It's $45 million from $45.7 million from the executive order of DHHR, $1.5 million a transfer from the Attorney General, and that once he did that from the $111 million, that left approximately $63 million, $64 million, and that's what the rest of this is filling in.
Okay, so this will basically take 2015-16 budget off as far as.
Right, it's been funded, correct.
It's been funded. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Senator from Oregon.
I had a question for the finance chair, if you continue to yield. To my distinguished colleague, I listened to the presentation that was made by Cabinet Secretary Kiss, I guess it was the day before yesterday. And this is sort of following up on the question by the senator from the 16th. As I understood, what he said was this number accounts for what it's a conservative approach. In other words, it accounts for what they think could be the worst case scenario through the end of the current fiscal year. Is that the way you understood what he said?
That's true, and to be candid about it, I mean, revenues have not been received for the month of May yet, so yeah, that's a good faith guess. And if we're putting more money in, it just gives flexibility for the worst case.
And the point, I think, made by the senator from Berkeley County, the answer to the question is, we pass this supplemental, if it's enacted and becomes law, we will have balanced and filled the 2016 budget and filled all the holes that are known or anticipated in it.
Based on the projections today, that's true, and that's $464 million of holes that have been filled.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Going once. Question for the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea, those opposed vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine, ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative declare the bill passed. Senator from Jackson.
Mr. President, I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Jackson moves the bill be made effective for passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question. 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1005, increasing tax rate on cigarettes and tobacco products. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Hall moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 3,
Senior
line
Senator
25.
from the 4th.
After the word beginning, by inserting the words on or after.
How do I explain?
Senior Senator from the 4th.
It's just a technical amendment. It lines up with the intention of the mover of the amendment.
Is there discussion? If not, questions on the adoption of the amendment offered by the senior senator from the 4th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senators Prezioso, Beach, Facemeyer, Kessler, Kirkendall, Laird, Miller, Palumbo, Plymel, Romano, Snyder, Stallings, Unger, Williams, Wolfel, and Yost move to amend the bill.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Senator from Marion requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the same bill that was offered yesterday in the Finance Committee that barely lost by one vote, and we thought we'd run it by you again today. Maybe there'd be a change of heart. It's very simple, Mr. President. The amendment states that we're going to raise the tobacco tax an additional $1, hopefully to procure about $119 million in revenue that would be used, obviously, to take care of our PEIA problem, not only for the FY17 year that we're going to need $43 million, but also the remainder of the years of 18, 19, and so forth. We'd like to take the first $43 million in the fiscal year for next year to go towards PEIA and the remaining $76 million into the General Revenue Fund. We feel that this is a more comprehensive approach to fix the problem. We all know that our public employees, teachers, service personnel have worked diligently throughout the years to procure these benefits, and we certainly want to, keep our words and fund this program. The 45 cents tax that was recommended by the governor is certainly commendable, but it doesn't fix the problem beyond the fiscal year for next year. And I think it's totally unfair to tell the people when we leave here, after this special session, that we're going to fix their PEIA problem and say, we've totally funded it. Then we come back next year and we're back in the same situation. There's a tremendous amount of distrust, I think, in the general public from political people and politicians that go out there and say, hey, we took care of you for this year. We didn't tell them the rest of the story, that, it's only temporary. Then they come back in and all of a sudden they're back in the same quagmire 2 years down the road. It's not fair that those folks should be worried about these health care benefits. So we think that this is a more comprehensive approach to fixing not only an economic impact, but a health impact. And I didn't go through all the, the pluses for raising the cigarette taxes. I think you all know. I mean, there's a tremendous impact in trying to get people to quit smoking because of the economic and health impact that it has on the state. Now, this is not a problem you're going to fix overnight. It's going to take a while, but this is certainly a solution. All the empirical evidence that I've ever read sustains that we're on the right track in raising tobacco tax to curtail a problem that has a major impact on the budget of West Virginia. And we lead the nation as far as in death from tobacco-related illnesses and things of that sort. But most importantly, my background in education, I've seen a tremendous amount of tobacco use by the youth. Now, adults, it's pretty hard. We've had tremendous tobacco cessation programs that we try to educate the public and say, hey, it's not good for you. It's not good for you. They know it's not good for you. But what happens? They continue to smoke. If we can make an impact with the youth, I think, we're going to make tremendous strides. Also, one thing that disturbed me yesterday was the fact that, if we pass the $1 tobacco tax and pass it over to the House, they say it's dead on arrival. What happened to the two-house system? I mean, don't we have the prerogative to, have our own mind, to have our own opinions? Obviously, we send many bills over to the House year after year that they don't agree with. And that's their prerogative. They shouldn't agree with it. Maybe they have a better idea, and a lot of times they do. They have a better idea, and what happens, it comes back over here, and we agree. But by sending 45 cents over to the House, you're saying, hey, we've set the ceiling. This is it. There's no debate. There's no compromise. 45 cents is what both houses will accept. Well, let's send $1 over. Maybe we'll get some compromise. Maybe it'll be 65 cents. Who knows? We haven't had a debate here. We say that we have a spirit of compromise in this body. Not one time did we say, well, is there any difference between $1 that, the minority the minority is placating the $1, and obviously the majority wants 45 cents. Is there any compromise between the two? If we didn't even compromise, let alone the House. But, it just bothers me tremendously that we're going to say that the House is setting the standard for the Senate. I've been here a lot of years, and I've never seen the debate that was curtailed by either House. And I think it's healthy to have that debate. We each have to have opinions, but in the end, there has to be a compromise. Another thing that kind of stuck out in my mind as I thought through this thing yesterday was the fact that, hey, we were the ones that the Senate passed the tobacco tax to the House last year. And in prior years, when one body sends a bill to the other House and it doesn't pass, that body in turn is the first the next session, whether it be a regular session or a special session, to pass the tax back to us and see if we like their idea. Well, that didn't happen. We're sort of in a quagmire in that particular instance. Yesterday on the floor, I was told that my $1 cigarette tax was voodoo economics. Well, I don't know what voodoo economics is. I've never practiced voodoo in any sense of the forms. A lot of times I'd like to have a voodoo doll, but, you know, it probably be dangerous in my hands. But when we look at the economic impact across the state, you know, we're saying that the border counties are going to be harmed by if we raise our tobacco tax to $1. Well, let me just remind you that Maryland right now, as it stands, has a $2 tobacco tax. You know, if we raise it to $1.55, people from Maryland going to come to West Virginia? Well, they probably may. Pennsylvania's at $1.60. Right now, if we go to $1.55, we're still 5 cents cheaper. Ohio's at $1.60. Kentucky's at 60 cents right now. So we are probably 5 cents lower than they are. And, you know, probably can't do anything about that. It'll raise it to $1.05, or, you know, there'll be $1.05 cheaper than we are. Virginia, they're at 30 cents. We're not going to do anything about that. But the thing that I'm trying to say, I don't think you're going to see a large economic impact by people buying cigarettes, and we certainly don't want to be the black market entity for selling cigarettes throughout the rest of the states. So, you know, in the end, it's difficult, and I know where this vote's going to go. I mean, I can see the handwriting on the wall, and I didn't even bring my crystal ball today. I think it's going to break down between party lines, and you know, and I feel that certainly there are a lot of folks that are sympathetic to the idea that we want to fix, you know, our healthcare system and our people in our state to show them a better way, a healthier lifestyle, and certainly want to fix our budget. I mean, I can't imagine, even with $1, we're going to end up with a remainder of $152 million in the $52 million in the 17 budget, and you know, with the $90 million that we've already cut, in addition to finding another $152 million, it's going to be difficult to do. The finance chair and I have talked many times. You know, it's just hard to find compromise, and we've passed the budget out. We've gone line item by line item. It's difficult to make that decision. But in the final end, you know, the vote's been cast, and it's unfortunate. I know a lot of you probably would want to vote for this thing because I, in my heart, think it's the right thing to do, but, you know, other folks may not. But saying that in the end, Mr. President, I certainly don't want to embarrass anybody, and with that, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Are there further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Ferns moved to amend the bill on page 1, section 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read, and that all amendments be considered as one.
The senator from Ohio requests unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read, and all amendments be considered as one. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment's pretty simple. It removes other tobacco products from the taxation considered within this bill. Thank you.
Is there discussion? Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. So would the senator from Ohio yield, the Senate Health Chairman yield, please?
Senator, yes.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, so the plan is to just tax vape products, Copenhagen, Skoal, and those things just at a regular sales tax. Is that what your amendment does?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from Marshall.
Would the senator from Putnam yield?
Senior senator from the 4th yield.
Yes, thank you.
Senator yields.
You know, there was an amendment, I think, offered yesterday by the senator from Boone that we increased the tax, I think, on vapor products so that they would be taxed at the same level. Does this basically undo what we did in finance?
Excuse me. I'm told it's not, that was for I don't know these terms well, but that was for vapes. Is that correct? This is snuff and chewing tobacco. It's a different.
So we're taking snuff and chewing tobacco, the stuff that causes lip cancer and all other kind of cancers and things that young kids are getting addicted to and starting very early when they're teens, and we're going to take them out of the additional tax. If you don't smoke it, you don't pay it. Is that it? Is that what we're doing here with the health chairman's amendment?
I think I would have the health chairman answer that question, but I had the fiscal questions. I thought you were wanting to know the numbers.
What's the cost if we adopt this amendment?
Other tobacco products is $4.7 million.
And that includes just the Skoal and smokeless and chew tobacco?
Anything that's not a cigarette or not vapor is what I'm told.
All right. Now, Senator from Ohio, yield.
Senator from Ohio, yield. Senator yields.
I mean, you're the health chairman, Senator. I'm just wondering, is there any health benefit whatsoever to the people of this state if we adopt your amendment?
There is no health benefit, but I would argue that if the goal of taxation is to eliminate all unhealthy products, and this shouldn't be the only one that we're considering, I think it's my duty, beyond being just the health chairman, to look at taxes borne upon the citizens of West Virginia. And whether we like it or not, these taxes aren't borne by the industries that produce the products. It's borne by the folks who choose to purchase them. If I believe for a second that increasing these taxes was going to alter people's health habits, then I would introduce bills that increase taxes on fast food and sugary drinks and everything else under the sun that causes unhealthy products. But the reality of it is, in my opinion, that these are just a politically advantageous way to pass a tax on to the citizens of West Virginia.
So you don't believe that higher taxation of these products does not reduce significantly the use of tobacco products, including Skoal and smokeless, among particularly our youth? You don't believe that's true?
I don't think that there's a significant decrease in the usage of these OTP products by increasing the tax at the suggested amount.
Is there any data that you know of or studies that would suggest that, or is that just a personal opinion?
I have not seen studies to prove the contrary.
To the contrary?
Right.
You've not seen any of the studies that say the higher the tax, the lower the...
I think it's highly likely that if you increase this tax by some huge amount of money, let's just say for the sake of argument $5, I think there's going to be less people that buy that product. But I don't think long term that increasing the tax in the state of West Virginia on these products is going to change the health habits of the citizens of West Virginia.
So if we don't vote no on a tobacco tax, it's not going to have... Is it your opinion as well that with tobacco, raising the tax will have a negligible or no effect on smoking habits in this state? So it will, the tax benefit or the health benefit is a non-factor in our decision on the tobacco tax we're about to vote on.
I think the health benefit from increasing taxes is minimal.
I'm surprised to hear that, Senator. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in as strong an opposition as one can stand in opposition to this amendment. In so many ways, but the couple comments I'm going to make here has to do with the Morbidity and Mortality World Report from 2016. In 2015, 1 in 4 high school students and 1 in 13 middle school students report the current use of tobacco products. In 2011, there was, let me get to this, 1.5% of students using e-cigarettes or vape in 2011. In 2015, 16% of middle school students and high school students are using vape products. And these contain nicotine and they are addictive. And contrary to the current Senate Health Chair, the cost does clearly impact particularly the youth with regard to whether they purchase or get started on tobacco or other tobacco products. The other thing is addiction. Nicotine is an addiction. Okay, and one addiction, if you're addicted to nicotine, it increases your risk of becoming an alcoholic, and it also increases your risk of using opioids and becoming addicted to opioids. So in a state that suffers from an addiction problem already, we're paving the streets to make it easier to become addicted. When I think of the future health care costs, and no question that the studies show, no question, that if you raise the cost of tobacco products, particularly in the youth, a sizable decrease in usage happens. And if you would cut tobacco use just by 10%, in 1 year, you would save over $300 million in health care costs. With regard to our budget over the past several years, we've cut taxes to the tune of about $500 million a year. And yet our state budget continues to go up some, and you know why it goes up? Medicaid costs. Every year, Medicaid costs. And do you know what drives Medicaid costs? Tobacco use and obesity. The same thing that drives PEIA cost, tobacco use and obesity. So I worry about the future health care costs. I worry about the addiction associated with other addictions. And frankly, folks, I worry about this body. I worry about this body, whether or not the tail is wagging the dog. And I see the tobacco lobby in the back there. And who's really who's really doing and changing West Virginia, folks? I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that the tail is wagging the dog. I'm also upset that we are okay with West Virginia being a destination location for buying tobacco products. What a nice thing to have a destination location. You can come there and buy cheap tobacco products. The fact that vape products have increased from 1.5% of the students using in 2011 to just in 4 years, 16% using in 2015. Folks, it's got the World Health Organization in a Twitter, okay? And so given the increasing use of e-cigarettes, a concerted effort must be made to be clear to both adults and children that e-cigarettes, while attractive to many, may not be safe for anyone. So, folks, you know, it's interesting. We have 2 physicians in this body of 34. And I try my best to help the health of West Virginia. To have this amendment just flies in the face of that. I'm embarrassed, to be honest with you, and I urge rejection of the amendment.
Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the health chair yield?
Senator yields.
Yes.
I was distracted, as I'm prone to be in this chamber earlier. Did I hear you say that, in your view, there's no statistical support that taxing tobacco products tends to lower or lowers usage of tobacco products?
I said the amount that we are increasing the tax within this bill, I think, will have a minimal effect on health benefits of people.
Do you have a study to support that?
No.
Do you have any fact Any,
I'm sorry?
I mean, that's contrary to what I believe to be fact. I mean,
Well, you're stating then your opinion, or you have a study then that proves otherwise?
well, I'll just cite the World Health Organization as my study.
And that study states exactly what's in this legislation as far as increases and subsequent benefits?
I take the word of my colleague from Boone that that's true, yes.
Okay.
So here's my question. Do you remember back in the day when people had keg parties at their houses and their teenage kids, the parents actually bought the beer? Have you ever heard of that happening?
Yes.
And as a juvenile judge in a former life, the justification for that, I'll represent to you, was at least they're not using drugs. You know, they're using alcohol. So everything's going to be great. Well, that's what vaping is. At least he's not smoking Pall Malls or Marlboros. He's vaping. And you've got an increase from 1.5% of children, to 16% of our children in our state are using vape or vaping products. That is a gateway exercise into tobacco. Now, if we as a group decide we don't have a problem with that, then majority rules. But from a health perspective, I mean, do you challenge me on that vaping is a gateway to actual use of tobacco, or maybe in the alternative, are there any ill health effects that go along with vaping that you're aware of?
I believe there are. My understanding is, and actually I've attended several conferences this year, one of those being NCSL, and everything that I've heard across the country is that the activity associated with vaping is in a rapid decline, and that industry is in a rapid decline.
What is?
The industry of vaping.
That's contrary to what the gentleman from Boone,
I'm talking from the National Conference of State Legislatures.
Vaping is on the way out? Okay. In our state, I don't believe that's the case in our state. That's all I'm kind of concerned about. But I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senior Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Finance Chairman yield?
Senator yields.
Yes.
Thank you. Senator, I think it's been debated here quite a bit about the health aspects of the gentleman's amendment, Senator's amendment from Ohio, the health care chair's amendment. I just want to be clear on something on the fiscal aspect of it. His amendment the fiscal aspect of his amendment would take $4.7 million out of what we would have been generating. Is that correct? Is that what I heard you say?
That's correct. I'm seeing three things on the fiscal note. The cigarettes would bring $71.5 million. The other tobacco products bring $4.7 million. That's what's being amended out. The e-cigarette fluid is $1.8 million, and that's not being amended out. That's
Okay.
the only thing I know about this amendment.
So we have a $270 million deficit that we're here, and the reason why we're called in a special session is because we did not come up with a budget at the end of the regular session. 2 months have passed. There still is no budget. We are still waiting to try to fill a $270 million gap, and the senator from Ohio's amendment is basically taking away a potential revenue source of $4.7 million of probably the only revenue enhancement bill that we're going to have in this session. Is that correct? Am I understanding this properly?
I think you're right. I think the $4.7 million would, according to the fiscal note, that's exactly what would happen.
So my question as finance chair and part of the leadership, are you for this amendment?
Not personally.
So you're going to vote against it?
I'm thinking about what I'm going to do.
I mean, I'm just wanting to know if the leadership of this chamber is really serious about meeting this $270 million deficit. I want to know that what we're here is really serious. Are we really serious here about getting a budget done? Because amendments like this shows that it indicates that the seriousness is not very high. So I'm just wanting to know what the leadership position of this amendment is so that I can vote accordingly.
Well, I assume you think I'm one of the, I might defer to the majority leader on that question.
Well, whoever can answer on the leadership's behalf of this body, I'd like to know, or even if the president would like to take a stab at it, if I want to do a point of inquiry, I can ask him about the seriousness of this. That's fine too. But someone, please indicate the seriousness of what we're doing here and if this amendment is something that they support.
Senator from Jackson.
I'll speak to the amendment in reference to your question. I hate this amendment. I hate it. And I said yesterday in finance that politics is the art of the possible. I want the revenue from this cigarette tax increase, and I want the health benefits that will accrue to the citizens of West Virginia as a result of this tax increase, as was so eloquently said by the gentleman from Marion. We're serious about this, and I'm sensitive to all the arguments, my dear friend, about getting yanked around by the House. I'm sensitive to those arguments, and I want to push back against those every time I hear them. But the truth is, we're a bicameral body. And in a special session in particular, we try to find the compromise, find the sweet spot in a hurry, because we're burning $39,000 a day of taxpayer money. And we want to get to that solution, and unfortunately, this is what we can get through. I've been, to my dear friend again, one of the biggest advocates for a $1 increase when I was sitting on that side of the aisle, and we weren't able to get there. And I'd love to have that, but I can't get there. We cannot get there. So I know that, as you accurately mentioned, this is likely one of the only revenue measures that we'll attempt to do. And this is a piece I'd love to have in there. I'd love to have it in there, but I'm just know we can't do it. And yes, I'll yield the question.
So what you're saying to me, now this is new information, and it just seems like we're constantly changing here. Are you saying to me that the House has already communicated to the leadership of this body, you and the President and others, that if this amendment does, if this amendment doesn't pass here, if the Health Chairman's amendment to exempt this area from the tax doesn't pass, then they will not take the whole bill up? They're just not going to take anything up?
Well, I mean, you're asking
It's dead on
very
arrival?
specifically questions.
Yes.
I don't know that I can answer in
Well,
that
you're in
degree of
negotiations with them,
specificity.
so I'm just wondering.
Well, I was just saying that it's our understanding from the House leadership that this will not be a component of the bill that passes the House, the OTP.
So let them take it out.
Well, I mean,
That's part of the process, right?
but as I was saying, we try to expedite these issues during a special session when we're burning all this money of taxpayer money. We know what's going to be the end product. So,
Well, Senator, I mean, with all due respect, that's the same speech you gave yesterday up at the Finance when the senator from Marion offered his $1. I mean, it's almost word for word. We would love to do it. I'd love to do $1. I mean, you've been reported in the paper doing that, but it's the art of the possible and all like that. I mean, you did the same speech up there in regards to his amendment that we couldn't do his amendment.
consistency is a good thing.
Exactly. But there's no discussion on this particular provision until we got down here on the Senate floor, and all of a sudden, you're saying the same speech. I mean, surely you must have gotten further information from the House on this, and that's why the leadership, and I'll just say, the leadership of this body is offering up this very unhealthy amendment, both fiscally and health-wise, because of the so-called art of the possible, I think you termed it. Is that a proper characterization of this situation, or am I off on that?
Well, I'm not sure I heard a characterization other than the fact that this is ultimately what is believed will be the end product that can pass both bodies and generate $71.5 million of new revenue for the state of West Virginia on tobacco products.
I don't think it's going to generate any more 71.5 million, will it?
This is a 45-cent tobacco tax increase that generates
No,
71.
but the gentleman's amendment reduces that now. No, it's still 71? But
it would have been
reduces about
76 or
4.70.
something. Yeah.
76.
Yes.
So we're starting to dwindle down, and we don't even know what they're going to amend out to come back, and we may not even end up with anything at the end of the day.
Well, what I'm trying to communicate without absolute 100% knowledge is that there is a very high likelihood that the $71.5 million and the health benefits associated to that will accrue to this state and to our citizens if we pursue this path. Otherwise, it's in jeopardy.
So why are we exempting this particular product while we're taxing the others? Why are we exempting this particular product from that?
Well, I said at the outset, I don't like it. The reason why.
So you're going to vote against it?
No, because I understand that there are compromises that we have to make in order to achieve our objectives. I don't like it. I mean, I wish the Senate ran the whole state. We'd do a great job, I think.
Well, we're not doing a good job right now.
Well,
so I'm just letting you know. So I don't share with this. I mean, we keep on compromising with ourselves, negotiating with ourselves, so we're not doing a very good job. No one's indicated anything from the House. We just keep hearing that this and that and so forth, and keep negotiating with ourselves. So I don't see where this is leading.
You know, we can have the vote on this, and we can, pass or fail. At the end of the day, what I would like to communicate to the body and to Mr. President is that the likelihood of us gaining the advantages of the 45-cent cigarette tax is greatly enhanced with the adoption of this amendment and with the rejection of the dollar amendment for the entire cigarette tax. That's all I'm saying. Now, is it an exact science? No. It's the communication, it's the dialogue, it's the discussions, and you've been in this chair. You know exactly how it works. And you can't always get what you want. And so we have to sometimes take half measures. I don't like it, but that's the nature of the democracy, and it's a bicameral body, and that's where we're at. And I really don't know what else I could add to this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I demand the yeas and nays on this, and also I just want to express my disgust with the process of what's happening here. We're hearing rumors of, the House won't do this, the House won't do this, that. I haven't heard anything officially. Also, we hear rumors that legislators are being taken out by tobacco company folks and whining and dining at the Chop House. I don't even know if that's true. All speculations are seen around this, but this really stinks. And I'll tell you what this vote is all about. This vote is a vote if the leadership of this body is really serious about this $270 million deficit. This vote is about if this body is really serious about doing a budget. This vote is serious. This vote is to indicate if this leadership of this body really wants to get the job done. I'm going to tell you, I'm voting against this amendment because of the fact that I'm serious about getting the job done and balancing a budget. Mr. President, there are students out there with letters from the Promise. I have parents call me, students call me. They have letters saying, we promise you a Promise scholarship, but we can't give the promise yet because we're not sure what the budget's going to be. Those students are trying to make a decision on their lives if they stay in West Virginia and go to school, or if they're going to go outside the state, our best and brightest. There's agencies and groups that are trying to prepare their budgets and they can't until we finish our work here to finish our budget. There are companies that are looking at West Virginia that want to come in, but saying, heck, if you all can't get your act together and do a budget, are we sure we want to do a business with you? This ripple effect is going through all of our society as we sit down here and basically not move forward with this deficit and meeting this deficit. Amendments like this, when we're trying to make hard decisions that none of us want to necessarily have to make, but we got to, because as the senator from Jefferson said the other day, leaders lead. We were elected by our constituents to come down here and to make those hard decisions. And amendments like this is an insult to the entire process. And I just, right now, if this amendment passes this body, I think it's an indication that this Senate and the leadership of this Senate's not serious about the budget, about the $270 million deficit, and I hope the people of West Virginia rise up and voice their discontent. Thank you.
Senior Senator from the 16th demands the ayes and nays. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Further discussion. The Senator from Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't plan on getting up to speak, but I hear some of the ludicrousy that's going on here that it is pretty amazing to me. But I hear people say that raising taxes on cigarettes and tobacco will not curtail, and I have studies showing this, saying that this will never curtail anything, and actually revenue will go down. But let me tell you that I've got a document here that raising cigarette taxes reduces smoking, especially among kids, and the cigarette companies know it. The cigarette companies have opposed tobacco increases by arguing that raising cigarette prices would not reduce adult or youth smoking. But the company's internal documents disclosed in the tobacco lawsuits show that they know very well that raising cigarette prices on one of the most effective ways to prevent and reduce smoking, especially among kids. Philip Morris, of all the concerns, there is one taxation that alarms us the most. While marketing restrictions and public and passive smoking restriction do depress volume, in our experience, taxation depresses it more severely. Also, they said, when taxes goes up, industry loses volume and profits as many smokers cut back. R.J. Reynolds, if prices were 10% higher, youth 12 to 17 incidents would be 11.9% lower. Now, I'm not making this up. This is from their own documents. It is clear that prices have a pronounced effect on the smoking prevalence of teenagers, and the goals of reducing teenage smoking and balancing the budget would be served by increasing the federal excise tax on cigarettes. I could go on and on from MIT, from all these places that go on about this, but these are documents that are absolutely here from their own sources from lawsuits that they've been opposing these things. First off, I've been here for a while, and usually when we've been coming into special session, if whatever house passed a bill, if we passed a bill and the House wouldn't take it up, the House passed a bill and we wouldn't take it up, we always started with the one point. Well, we've already passed it. We've already passed a tax similar to this, or whatever tax we're talking about, cigarettes and tobacco. And it's always customary, since we already know that there are votes over here to pass it, that you pass it first. And you let them dictate what they're going to pass before you have to vote on it again. Well, this is a wrong way of doing it. This is what's been chosen by the leadership of the House and the Senate. And now we're arguing over something that, when we're saying we need more revenue, and it does reduce what's happening out there, and the senator from Boone talked about that when you're talking about vapor products and things like this, that it goes up to 16% of use doing this. This is where this starts. We've got to stop it. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. This vote for me is going to be easy. Maybe I've been here 19 years. This will be the easiest vote I've ever made. And the people of this state, and I hope the TV cameras are on and they're watching, every other 33 of you in here watching, because this vote is a real easy, simple vote. If you vote green, you're voting for big tobacco. If you vote red, you're voting for the health and welfare of the people of this state and its children. It's simple. Everyone's watching, Mr. President, everybody in this chamber, and they'll be watching your vote as well. That's what this is framed as, whether you are voting for big tobacco or you're voting for the health of our kids. I've heard the evidence presented by the senator from Wayne. He's dead on. From Boone, dead on. I know the senator from Wyoming, sister, who's the chair of, or the head of our Secretary of Health and Welfare, or Department of DHHR, and I've heard her say that the biggest single effect on tobacco usage is its price. I've heard her say that in committee. This question, this vote is easy, Mr. President. Vote red, vote no, that we stand for the health and welfare of this party, of this Senate. This Senate, this body, one of the two chambers, if nobody else in this building, stands for our children in this state and its future health. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think a lot of this has been beaten to death. Many people on both sides was very for a $1 increase in the tobacco tax. I've been a strong proponent of that. However, in my brief tenure as a legislator, I know there is some art to compromise, and so my understanding is there was a lot of heartburn and a lot of twisting on the other side that they would eventually go for a 45-cent tax on tobacco. We did that during the regular session. We did that in bipartisan fashion. We sent it over, and it got us nowhere. We're right back here wasting taxpayer money. So as much as I would love to see a $1 or more increase, because, as many of you have stated, it's cost in West Virginia a price tag of $2 billion. Dr. Greg Hand, Dean of Public Health at WVU, and I believe I've sent everybody in this body that the article and the studies, that's what it's cost in the state of West Virginia. If we have a $1 or more increase, and that's what it takes, less than that, you don't see the benefit. Tobacco companies make some adjustments, people continue to smoke. If it's one life saved in West Virginia, though, that 45 cents is worth it, and it's in a time when we desperately need the revenue. So, you know, I can compromise, and some is better than none. You know, sometimes you have to amputate a foot to save the life. So I can give on that, but I think I agree with me and my colleagues is that at some point you got to draw your line in the sand. We all stand up here on our soapbox and say, at one point or another, we all want West Virginia to go from the bottom of the list to the top of the list in so many categories. Well, health is one of the first and foremost. We're the unhealthiest state. In fact, when it comes to tobacco, we're below the bottom. 49 states in the United States has declined smoking rates, and Puerto Rico. We're the only state in the country not only has stayed neutral but has increased. The number one cause of death, the number one cause of heart disease and stroke. We can't legislate, you know, as my colleague from Boone stated, if you could decrease smoking rates in this state and you could decrease obesity, the savings is tremendous. A $1 increase in tobacco in this state, per Dr. Hand's study, is an immediate impact of $277 million in medical cost savings. That's trips to the ER, that's coronary procedures not being done, that's medications and antibiotics and that would be saved. But that, again, that's with a $1 increase. There is a decline in youth smoking. In fact, nationally, a 10% increase, which I think our adjustment's a little less than 10%, is about a 6% reduction in youth. In the state of West Virginia, and this is DC studies, it would be about a 12 to 15% decrease in use of oral tobacco. So we stand up here and say we're not going to pick winners and losers. I don't see how you can justify telling oral tobacco smokers that we're going to put a tax on them and the same leaf of the same product, we're not going to put a tax on the oral. So I stand in opposition of the amendment, and I encourage adoption of the 45% tobacco tax.
Further discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wow. We've sort of taken a ride through the place here this morning. I thought we were called in for a budget. I didn't know that we were being called in for a big debate over health care. As we speak right now, forces are at work on the other end of the building, caucusing those that want $0 and those that want $1. Right now. Press is shaking their head. They know it. They're monitoring it. It's going to be on the news tomorrow. We have to be realistic about what we get done here. For 13 years, and I believe that this end of the building and that end of the building has only been under the Republican control for 1.5 years, but 13 years, nothing. Who was wagging the tail of that dog? I'm curious. 13 years. You worried about whether our youth is using tobacco products? I noticed that there was a state out there not too long ago. It raised, or were working on raising it, the age from 18 to 21. Who in here has introduced that legislation? Thank you. I didn't know. I had to ask. I've got one person over here. We've got to take care of the budget. We have to take care of the budget not just for the non-smokers, but for the smokers as well. I was one of the people that voted against it. I think it was 1 out of 6 when it was $1. I am on the record right now of going 45 cents because it helps us get us where we need to be. I don't like it. I don't like it any more than what the majority leader in front of me is unhappy about the fact that he's not getting $1. The argument about which end of the building gets the bill first, being customary, is not a good argument at all. Frankly, we need to quit doing the things that we've done in the past that has brought the chickens home to roost here today. We need to be able to get ourselves in a position to be able to attract the manufacturing jobs back, be able to make the ends meet on the budget. And I tell you what, Mr. President, you and the finance chair and the majority leader and everybody that I've seen in here have been working together to try to get to this point. This is a compromise on this amendment. Because if we don't do it, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get nothing. Make no mistake about it, you're going to get nothing. One last comment on it, and that is the vaping industry that's out here. I know many people that have used that as a vehicle to get off of the cigarettes. If you didn't know about the vaping, it comes in different degrees of nicotine that is in the milligrams so that you can actually phase yourself out. That's right, you phase out, you wean yourself off of the nicotine. That is an industry that has helped bring thousands upon thousands of people in this state alone off of tobacco. That in itself is reason enough to be able to keep this, pass this amendment, all in itself. And the innuendo that there's something going on down at the Chop House and that somebody is forcing us to do this is not true. It is nothing more than scare tactics that has been being used on us from the very beginning, Mr. President. If this call was opened up to where we could get special revenue, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. I had that conversation with the secretary or the commissioner of the taxes over there, and I just don't understand why we're in such a fight over trying to make it so when we know that we're able to get this done on the other end of the building with the 45 cents, why are we backpedaling on it? Let's just go get it done and get the rest of this, so the people in West Virginia will know what's going on, and then they can quit pulling the scare tactics of no promise scholarship, PEIA, the slow income tax refunds. The list goes on and on that I've been witnessing. And the funny part about it is I sit in this chamber, and I feel like I'm fairly well connected on what's going on, but I see all this stuff out in the press. Where's it coming from? I'll tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from downstairs and in the minority, where they're sitting here telling everybody and scaring them into believing that we're going to do this and we're going to do that. There's not going to be a 1% sales tax increase. It ain't going to happen. There won't be a budget until January of 2020 if that's going to be the case. So I find this real interesting, yeah, I'm exposing a little bit of what's going on, but there's been a lot of bad behavior that's taken place that's really made people believe that things are going on. We're working for them, and we're not picking out special interest groups on it. We're working for all of them. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm done.
Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish this was just as simple as one single topic like health issues or one single topic like revenue, but we've all been here a while. We know it's never that simple. All that being said, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment.
Is there objection?
The Senate is still on committee substitute for Senate Bill 1005, a lengthy debate over an amendment to remove smokeless tobacco and vaping products and leave the tax only on cigarettes, and it was withdrawn.
Senators allowed to withdraw the rule, withdraw the amendment by rule. The amendment is withdrawn. Next amendment.
Senator Miller moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 3.
Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu and having it read.
The senator from Greenbrier requests unanimous consent to explain amendments in lieu of having them read, and that all amendments be considered as one. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've listened to the discussion, and you're tired of hearing people talk, and I'm tired of having to say this, but I'm going to say it again. Let me explain this amendment. This is an amendment, I'd like to say it's just a technical amendment because I think it is just technical. It's technical to make something bad good or better. I have never voted on a cigarette tax increase until this last session. It's the first time I'd ever done that. I voted on it because we have a budget issue and a budget problem. I listened to the discussion today. The reason I've never done that is explain the reason of this amendment. I've never done that because the people that we have hurt, time after time after time after time, are the working poor of West Virginia. We hurt them when we increased cigarette taxes more than any other group. I have those statistics. We hurt them when we increased sales tax. We hurt them when we increased any of the taxes proportionally, unless it were a progressive income tax. We hurt them more than any other group. The purpose of this amendment is to go ahead and do the 45 cents that you have agreed to or will agree to when you pass. But it's also to add another 55 cents to that tax, and it will go to an earned income tax credit. Now, what a strange time when we're in a budget crisis, and I haven't talked to my caucus, and I haven't talked to your caucus, and I don't care which caucuses say to this, but I will tell you this. An earned income tax credit provides something we need in this state, and that's jobs. How does it provide jobs? It gives poor working people who are paying taxes an opportunity up to 15% of their federal income tax, if they qualify for federal income tax, earned income tax credit, up to 15% of that can come back to those individuals. Those individuals can spend that money however they see fit. It's a tax credit. Someone had told me the other day, and I'm hard for me to imagine I'm in the same boat with former President Reagan. He called this, I believe, a welfare for the taxpayer. It was taxpayers' welfare. It was a good thing for taxpayers on the federal level. It's a good thing for taxpayers in West Virginia. I'm not arguing about cigarettes. You can vote that however you want. I'm not arguing about that. The majority leader said that politics is the art of the possible. I like that. This is a possibility of making a difference for some people in West Virginia. About 140,000, 160,000 children and about 140,000 working families. Someone else said taxes hurt the citizens of West Virginia. It hurts poor citizens of West Virginia more than anybody else. A cigarette tax, any tax, for people who make less than $20,000 a year, these tax increases, as we've talked about them, but particularly the cigarette tax, can be as high as 1.3 to 1.4% of their income. This is a way to help solve that problem. Someone else has said politics is the art of compromise. This is a compromise. Will the House? I don't know what the House will do. I don't care what the House does.
Chamber will be in order. Chamber will be in order.
This gives us an opportunity to say to the House, give us the 45 for the budget. That's all you think we need in the budget. I think we need a lot more than that. But give us the 45 cents for the budget. Let us take the rest and use it for this earned income tax credit. This has economic impacts on our state. Let me tell you how it impacts our state. And this is important to me. I don't think we come down here sometimes to think of the poor people we represent, the people who work every day for a living and make very little. That's who we represent in many ways in this state, a large percentage of our state. How this helps those folks. Somebody pays their taxes, they go to work every day. A mother with 3 children, she has to work, she drives a beat-up old car, the tires are worn out. She gets her earned income tax credit because she works, she continues to earn. She might be able to buy tires for her car to get to work. Someone shared with me on the federal level, someone bought a washing machine. Now, that may not mean much to you, and here you can buy your washing machines. She'd gone to the laundromat every week, $30 a week. She was able to save that money, bought a washing machine with her earned income tax credit to take care of her family. I was at church Sunday and heard the preacher, not the church that I preached, but I went to another church and heard another preacher say, it was a Greek proverb, a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never set in. We need to plant a tree today. We may not sit in it. We may even get voted because we voted for a tax increase. We may get voted out. It doesn't matter to me. It matters to me that we lead. The senator from Jefferson said that the other day. Leaders must lead. Let's lead today. I encourage the support of this amendment. I encourage you to think about this amendment. I encourage us. I don't want to do it in the tax, in the tobacco, but that's the only place we're going to get it at this point. I encourage you to think about that. Let's support this amendment this day. Thank you.
Sir, discussion. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, just, I don't know if it's a point of order or not, but I ask if the amendment is germane to the bill.
You're watching the West Virginia Channel on the West Virginia Legislature. Senate President Bill Cole and his colleagues and advisors are looking at the senator's amendment regarding the Earned Income Tax Credit to see if it's germane to the bill. Does it pertain to the bill? Is the right section of the code? Just seeing if it belongs there or not. This may take a while for all of them to sort out. Earlier today, the Senate did pass Senate Bill 1002, expiring funds from various accounts to unappropriated balance in the state fund and the general revenue that plugs a hole in the 2016 state budget. And that vote was 33-0. Also introduced in the Senate earlier today, Senate Bill 1006, the furlough bill, to allow the governor to furlough state employees in fiscal emergencies.
Senate will be in order. Senior Senator of the 4th, the chair's reviewed the amendment and we consider it to be germane.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The concept of the Earned Income Tax Credit, the gentleman, I think, is correct in most in the remarks he made, that it's got some benefit. It was actually, his quote from Ronald Reagan is accurate. That he considered it one of the programs for the poor that was probably better than a lot of the other entitlement programs that we have. And but I do have to say, given the realities of our circumstances, that we're trying to put a budget together that, given the fact that it's difficult to bring in a spending measure, a credit, against anything right now. I've had many credits brought to me in my office during the regular session, some of which I liked, but sadly people would walk away sad with me that we didn't do them. And I just simply would say that's a policy decision of the body, but without railing or anything about it, I think we know where we are in trying to put a budget together, and this would punch a 40. I think he has a fiscal note. I would say that I did not have the opportunity to look at this, and maybe this is an adjusted earned income tax credit, different than the one that I've looked at before, Mr. President, but that one was a $100 million plus fiscal note. So I'm not even sure that the fiscal impact is clear, and obviously the revenue much of this revenue has already been dedicated to one section of our budget, and to offset this credit with our revenue, expected revenue, would not be responsible to do at this time given the circumstances we're in, so I oppose the amendment.
Further discussion. The senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment for several reasons. First of all, our side of the aisle fully realizes that you're in charge of this budget, that you don't need a single Democrat vote to pass the budget in either house, and that any disagreement has to be resolved between the majority in both houses. But you know, when it comes to making our state go, you've heard me quote many times the old adage, those who fail to know history are doomed to repeat it. We can look at the Wisconsin and Minnesota models, who faced the same budget deficits we're facing now just a few years ago. Minnesota put money in the hands of working people. Because when you put money in the hands of working people, not the rich, not the ones who are on welfare, but working people, they spend it in your local economy. That revs your economic engine. That creates tax revenues for the budget, and it creates economic progress for the entire state. Earned income tax credit does exactly that. If I was in charge and could be dictator, I would raise enough revenues to plug our budget hole, and I would give the working people of this state money in their pocket to go spend in this state, because our state's transforming. Our state has to diversify. We have to have other economic engines in our state other than extractive minerals, and this is the way to do it. I ask you to consider this seriously. I say scrap everything we've done up to this time, because all we're doing is putting Band-Aids over our problems. Next year, when we all come back here, and some of us will be here and some of us won't, but we're going to face budget deficits that make this look like a little blip in your checkbook. It's our responsibility. We asked for this job. We asked to be leaders. We're not doing that. I know you all can do whatever you want, but I ask you to seriously consider an earned income tax credit for the working people of this state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? The senator for Bupshire.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from Greenbrier yield?
Senator yields.
If I could, just to sort of clarify for myself, I think the practical effect of this amendment, it's my understanding that the largest income bracket of people who smoke and use other tobacco products would be low-income citizens, impoverished people, poor people of West Virginia. Would that be true?
I don't know those numbers, but I would say you're probably correct.
And so if we tax poor people with the 55-cent per pack tax on cigarettes in order to give an earned income tax credit to poor people, does it not seem like what we're doing is taxing the poor to give money to the poor?
As I said, and what I said on the floor earlier, this isn't the exact tax I would like to put this in, but it's the only tax that I have seen running that we can try this. Not all poor people are smokers. It'd be a percentage, certainly, but not all poor people are smokers.
So we would be essentially punishing poor smokers to give money to poor non-smokers.
All smokers would pay.
But that's a pretty small number. I think I've seen statistics that indicate that the vast majority of smokers are low income.
I don't have those numbers.
And so it seems like this is more just an exercise in futility to take money from poor people to give money to poor people in this particular amendment. Even though I understand outside of this entire context, you might like to do an earned income tax credit, this seems to me to be a vehicle that is just a round-robin circular effect that actually accomplishes zero. It doesn't dump money, as the senator from Harrison County indicated, into the local economy, because the first thing it does is pull money out of the local economy, only to dump it back into the local economy. It seems like a futile exercise.
And I would not agree with that. It would be some come back around in a circle, but I think a greater amount would come back into the economy that was not there. I would mention, too, that the question was raised. It's not your question. You may have another question. I'm sorry.
No.
The comment was made about the cost. We're talking about $45 million raised. This would cost about $43 million to do this. So we're paying for it with the tax that we're raising, because obviously we decided we didn't need that tax or anything else.
Sure. I can't really support the amendment in this particular fashion for sure. I believe it really accomplishes nothing.
Well, and let me just comment on you not supporting it. Just keep EITC in your mind, because this needs to be done in this state.
I've heard the discussions related to it. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Just to briefly, again, I mean, I think everybody in this room knows that the way the Constitution establishes the budget process and the revenue estimates that the governor gives to us and how we can build a budget, that if this amendment were to pass, he would have to reduce the revenue estimates and by the amount of the amendment, and we'd have a $43 million hole in the plan that we've discussed an hour or so ago that would be really hard to fix. I mean, if budgeting wasn't the way we constitutionally do it around here, it'd be a lot easier to do it. But, you know, it's just we have to deal with revenue estimates and expenditures and a date certain and all that, and we're up against date certains here. So as meritorious as the idea may be, it just does not fit the time frame we're in right now. So I would have to strongly urge that we not pass this amendment.
Further discussion? Recognize Senator from Greenbrier to close.
I thought you were asking me a question, Senator. I'm sorry. We're actually increasing revenues. We're not decreasing revenues. We're increasing revenues with the extra cigarette tax, which would go to this purpose, to comment what you said. This is new money used for new calls, which would make a difference for people of West Virginia. I'm not going to, I think the senator from Upshur makes a point. This wasn't exactly where I wanted this to go. But it was the only place we have for it to go right now, because we're not looking at the telecommunications tax, which I think we should have looked. We're not looking at the sales tax, where I think we should have looked. This is the only tax in which we looked. This is a place I could put it. I thought about this last night. I was late coming in. I hadn't talked to anyone else about this. This is the place I felt that we could put it. There is bipartisan support for this. We always want bipartisan support. There is bipartisan support for this, maybe not in this body. But there's bipartisan support in the House. In fact, one of the leading proponents of this is a Republican in the House who has fought for earned income tax credits. So if we're concerned about the House, there is support in the House for this. And I think there's support in your hearts in this body for this, because we know people in our district this affects. We know people in our district that benefit from this happening. Is there a better way? Is there another place to put it, a better place? There may be. But this is the only animal, this is the only venue, this is the only vehicle running at the moment, and this is where I would like to see it put at the moment. I think this is extremely important. I will just warn you, if you vote it down, and I don't expect magic to happen, but if you do vote it down, you're going to hear about it time and time again. Every time there's a tax measure that comes up, I'm going to bring this up, and you're going to say, as you did last session, well, he ever sat down and shut up? And I'm not, because this is important. This is important to the people of West Virginia. I urge adoption of this amendment. Thank you.
Questions on the adoption of the amendment offered by the senator from Greenbrier. All those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed say no. Noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Are you sure? If not, the bill be engrossed in advance to third reading. Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 separate days be suspended, and that the bill be read a third time and placed upon its passage.
Senator from Jackson moves that the constitutional rule requiring bills to be read on 3 different days be suspended, and that the bill be read a third time and be placed upon its passage. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 23 yeas, 11 nays. 0 absent, not voting. Less than 4/5 of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule not suspended.
The constitutional
Bills on
rule
first reading.
not being
There are
suspended,
none.
and we'll wait until tomorrow for a vote on committee substitute for Senate Bill 1005.
Introduction of guests. Senator from Harrison.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I would move that the remarks with regard to the gentleman from Ohio's amendment to Bill 1005 be added to the appendix for the senators from Boone, Ohio, Wayne, and Putnam, and Greenbrier.
Senator from Harrison requests unanimous consent that remarks by the senators from Boone, Ohio, Wayne, Putnam, Greenbrier with regards Senate Bill 1005 be published, and Marshall be published in appendix to the Journal. If there's an objection, chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guests. Remarks by members. Miscellaneous business. Senator from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee will meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We hope to have, we're working on having some folks from different agencies there, not for full-blown budget hearings, but for conversation about the budget at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Minority Party Democrats will meet in caucus tomorrow at 10:45 before the 11 o'clock floor session.
Further announcements?
In my office.
Further announcements? If not, the question for the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11:30. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have declared the Senate adjourned.
The Senate had hoped to move Senate Bill 1005, the tobacco tax, up to go ahead in third reading, debate it, pass it, and get it over to the Senate. Now, committee substitute for Senate Bill 1005 will be taken up by the Senate tomorrow when it convenes at 11:30 in the morning or thereabouts. The Senate will send a bill over to the House for its consideration. Senate Bill 1002, expiring funds from various accounts to unappropriated balance in the state fund general revenue, that was passed out 33-0 earlier this morning. We will continue to monitor all the action on the floors of the West Virginia House and Senate as they continue this extraordinary session of the 82nd West Virginia Legislature. So we will be back tomorrow on television and online. For now, I'm Beth Voorhees for the West Virginia Channel, a service of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.